My personal testimony. There comes a moment in life when everything you thought was solid begins to dissolve. At first, I believed I was losing everything that mattered. Looking back now, I realize I was not losing my life, I was losing my illusions. For years, I chased the same things that most people chase: achievement, recognition, security, approval, and the hope that the next accomplishment would finally bring lasting peace. Each success brought a brief sense of satisfaction, but before long, an emptiness quietly returned. I could never fully explain it. Then, something began to change. The conversations that once fascinated me no longer held my attention. I found myself wanting more silence than noise, more truth than entertainment, more authenticity than appearances. I became increasingly sensitive to the energy of people and places. At times, I felt as though I no longer belonged to the life I had carefully built. Initially, I questioned whether something was wrong with me. Today, I see it differently. What I thought was falling apart was actually awakening. The identity I had spent decades constructing, the image of who I believed myself to be, was beginning to crack. My career, accomplishments, possessions, opinions, and even many of my beliefs could no longer answer the deepest question within me. Who am I? That question became more important than every other question I had ever asked. Life seemed to remove one layer after another. Some relationships naturally faded. Old ambitions lost their grip. Ideas that once seemed unquestionable no longer felt true. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't failure. It was life gently inviting me to discover something far deeper than the personality I had always defended. I began to understand that every difficult experience had been a teacher. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" I slowly learned to ask, "What is this experience trying to show me?" That simple change transformed everything. I also discovered that peace cannot be found by arranging the world exactly the way I want it. Peace begins when I stop fighting reality and start paying attention to the awareness that has been quietly present through every experience of my life. The more I became still, the clearer things became. Silence stopped feeling empty, it became alive. I realized that some of the deepest conversations I have ever experienced have taken place with no words at all. Over time, my values changed naturally. Recognition became less important than kindness. Achievement became less important than understanding. Being right became less important than being present. I no longer wanted to become someone special. I simply wanted to discover what I had always been. Perhaps the greatest lesson of all has been this: fulfillment is not waiting somewhere in the future. It has never depended upon money, status, or the approval of others. Those things may enrich life, but they cannot complete it. They cannot satisfy. What I had been searching for outside myself had quietly been present within me all along. My spiritual journey has not been about escaping the world. It has been about seeing the world with new eyes. I still work. I still love. I still create. I still experience challenges. But increasingly, those actions arise from a place of wholeness rather than from the fear that I am somehow incomplete. Every day, I try to spend a few moments in silence. I watch my thoughts instead of automatically believing them. I practice gratitude not because life is perfect, but because each moment offers another opportunity to awaken. I practice forgiveness because carrying yesterday into today only prolongs suffering. I practice forgiveness not because I did something wrong or someone did something wrong. I practice forgiveness knowing that there is nothing to forgive. This journey has taught me that awakening is not about becoming extraordinary. It is about becoming authentic. It is about removing all masks. It is about showing the real face. It is about remembering what was never truly lost. If my life has taught me anything, it is this: the peace we seek is not somewhere else. The joy I was seeking is not in possessions. The truth we seek is not hidden in another place or another time. The love we seek is not waiting for us after we become someone different. Everything I searched for in the world was quietly waiting beneath the noise of my own mind. My journey continues every day, but I now know that awakening is not a destination waiting somewhere in the future. It is the simple willingness to meet this moment exactly as it is, without illusion, without resistance, without the endless stories the mind creates. In that quiet seeing, something timeless reveals itself, a presence that has never been born, a presence that can never die, a presence that has been here before every thought, every memory, every identity. That presence is what I truly am. That presence is who I am. There is no past to return to. There is no future to chase. This moment is enough. I spent a lifetime searching for someone to save me, a teacher, a philosophy, a book, another experience, another answer. But no person from the past could save me. No knowledge could give me lasting peace. And then something extraordinary happened. In the deepest state of knowing, all knowledge disappeared. Only being remained, only awareness, only the undeniable simplicity of I am, not as a belief, not as a philosophy, not as an idea, as the only reality that never comes and never goes. I am that I am, and if you look deeply enough, so are you. Perhaps awakening is nothing more than remembering what has never been forgotten. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Until next time, may you discover that what you have been seeking has never been separate from you. You are that, and so it is.
I want you to just imagine something for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine you've spent literally decades of your life obsessively studying the fundamental nature of reality. Like reading incredibly dense philosophy, digging deep into psychology, the hard sciences,
Right, really putting in the work.
Exactly. You're exploring the nuances of ancient mysticism, building up this massive, impressive intellectual armor to understand how the universe functions.
Yeah, trying to figure it all out.
And then one night, while you're fast asleep, all of that conceptual scaffolding is just completely, entirely shattered.
Wow. I mean, it's the ultimate paradox, right?
It really is.
You spend your waking life analyzing every possible angle, and the answer, or rather the sudden realization that the question itself was fundamentally flawed, happens when your analytical mind is completely offline.
Right, when you're not even trying. And the text we're diving into today captures this phenomenon perfectly.
It really does.
We're looking at excerpts from a fascinating document titled Chapter 4, The Story of Joe, the Collapse of the Separate Self.
Such a great piece.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is to explore this radical, essentially unexplainable shift in human consciousness that happened to just one ordinary guy.
Just totally normal person.
Right, and we're going to look at how that deeply personal, entirely subjective event becomes a gateway to exploring the absolute frontiers of science and quantum physics.
Oh, it goes to some amazing places.
It does. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to understand the sheer magnitude of this shift, we really have to look closely at the setting.
Yeah, set the scene for us.
The date is April 15th, 2020. The time is approximately 4:18 in the morning.
Super specific.
Right. And this is when the author, Joe, experiences what we could broadly call an awakening.
Okay.
But what makes this specific account so grounding is the distinct lack of, well, cinematic or spiritual elements.
Right, he wasn't doing anything mystical.
Exactly. Joe wasn't halfway through a 40-day fast in a secluded monastery. He wasn't sitting in a lotus position in a Himalayan cave or meditating under a Bodhi tree.
He was just in bed.
He was asleep in his bed. Very ordinary, very human. As he actually notes in the text, he was probably snoring.
That detail is just, I love it. It strips away all the mystical pretension, you know? The only way I can really conceptualize this transition is by comparing it to aviation.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, it's like spending your entire life safely on the ground studying the complex aerodynamics of flight.
Right, reading all the manuals.
Exactly. You read the manuals, you memorize the physics, the math, the wind resistance coefficients. You're an undeniable expert on paper.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, completely without warning, someone just throws you out of an airplane at 30,000 feet.
That's exactly it. You transition instantaneously from having knowledge about a thing to having a direct, undeniable, experiential knowing of the thing.
Right, you're in it.
That distinction is the hinge upon which this entire narrative turns.
Yeah.
Because Joe points out that there was zero preparation.
Not at all.
There was no specific breathing technique, no meditation practice involved in that moment. It wasn't the culmination of a great spiritual achievement where he finally, reached the top of a metaphorical mountain.
And the terminology he uses is very deliberate here.
Oh, absolutely.
He states he didn't wake from sleep, he was awakened.
That's a huge difference.
Right. Because waking from sleep is a biological function you perform every morning.
Yeah, the alarm goes off and you wake up.
Exactly. But being awakened implies an event occurring where the conscious driver of the vehicle isn't the one turning the key anymore.
Right. Something foundational shifted beneath the surface of his identity.
So what actually happened in that moment?
Well, the core of this event, the primary shift that occurred in that fraction of a second, was the total evaporation of an assumption.
An assumption.
Yeah, an assumption that you, the person listening right now, make every single second of your life.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's the unquestioned assumption that I am here and the world is over there. The division between the observer and the observed just collapsed entirely.
So there was no longer a center point.
None.
No personal self standing apart from the experience, looking at it through the lens of Joe.
Exactly. There was just the experience itself.
Yeah.
Just awareness functioning without a middleman.
No, intellectually that might sound peaceful to a philosopher reading a book, right?
You're on paper.
But losing your sense of self sounds absolutely terrifying in practice. I mean, to me, it sounds like psychological freefall.
Oh, totally.
If I am not here, then I am gone. And for a survival-driven organism, that sounds indistinguishable from death.
Well, that's because we equate the self with survival.
Right.
Our evolutionary programming dictates that we must fiercely protect the boundaries of our identity, to protect our physical form.
Makes sense.
So the perceived loss of the self usually triggers an intense existential threat response.
But it didn't for Joe.
No. Joe addresses this biological reflex directly, explaining why this specific experience wasn't scary at all.
Okay, how does he explain that?
He uses this highly visceral analogy. He says the self, the ego, is like a heavy backpack that you've been carrying your entire life.
Oh, wow.
You're so accustomed to the weight, the friction, the chafing of the straps, that you simply label that continuous discomfort as normal life.
You carry it for so long you don't even know it's there.
Exactly.
You don't realize how much mental energy you're expending just to keep it balanced.
Yeah, just walking around with it.
So when that backpack suddenly drops off, you don't feel like you've lost a vital organ. You feel an immediate, overwhelming relief.
Yes. What vanished for Joe wasn't reality. What vanished was the resistance.
The resistance.
Yeah, the sheer exhausting burden of maintaining a fictional identity day in and day out.
Maintaining the boundaries of Joe.
Right. Protecting Joe's reputation, advancing Joe's career, worrying about Joe's future.
So when those psychological boundaries drop, the immense friction drops with them.
It does. The energy that was previously locked up in defending the perimeter of the ego is suddenly released.
So what fills that void? I mean, if the self completely collapses, what occupies that space?
That's the key question. Joe describes the immediate reality of this state, and the primary characteristic is absolute love.
Absolute love.
Yeah. But we have to be incredibly careful with the semantics here, because he's emphatically not talking about romantic love.
Right. It has nothing to do with affection or emotional attachment or sentimentality.
Exactly.
He writes that this love had no object, no condition, no cause.
It wasn't directed at anyone.
Yeah, and it didn't arise as a biochemical reward because something good happened. It was a structural property of the moment.
Which is such a wild concept. Reality was perfect simply because the mind, the analytical engine that constantly judges and divides things into categories of good or bad, was absent.
Right, because the analytical engine operates by slicing reality into manageable conceptual pieces.
It does. It decides what's beneficial for the survival of the ego and what's detrimental.
So when that engine shuts down, the underlying fabric of awareness is revealed to be unconditionally cohesive.
Yes. It's a state of total non-resistance to what is.
And that lack of resistance is what Joe interprets as this profound, objectless love.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is, if the engine of judgment shuts down, it makes perfect sense that fear vanishes entirely along with it.
Right, not just managed fear or reduced fear.
Zero fear.
Zero fear. Because if fear requires a boundary, something to protect, then removing that boundary removes the entire machinery of fear.
You can't be afraid if there is no other.
Right. For fear to exist, you need an individual who can be threatened and an external force to threaten them.
Subject and object.
Me and the scary thing over there.
Exactly. But if the boundary between in here and out there collapses, there's no one left to be afraid.
The very mechanics of anxiety are completely unplugged.
Totally unplugged. The perceived threat only exists relative to a perceived center.
And ordinary life is built entirely on these relative comparisons, isn't it?
It really is. We define good compared to bad, success compared to failure. We define our present moment by comparing it to our past memories or our future anxieties.
But this awakened experience had no center and no boundary. It was self-luminous.
Yeah, it was complete in and of itself, requiring nothing outside to validate it or give it context.
But this raises a massive structural problem when it comes to communication.
Ooh, a huge one.
I mean, if there is no experiencer, and there's no experience and nothing being experienced.
Yeah.
Wait, if the subject and the object are totally merged into one seamless field of awareness, how can language even begin to capture this?
It can't.
Isn't language, by its very definition, a giant system of reference points?
Yes, exactly. Language is fundamentally a tool of division.
Right. A subject acts upon an object. I see a tree.
To name a thing is to separate it from everything else in the environment. A tree is only a tree because it's conceptually cordoned off from the sky and the dirt. So when Joe attempts to describe an experience where those divisions do not exist, language begins failing within seconds.
It just breaks down.
The experience is self-evident to the awareness having it, but it deeply resists being stuffed into the narrow boxes of nouns and verbs.
Because every explanation feels misleading. The question itself, what did you experience, implies a you and an it.
Right. It forces a non-dual reality back into a dualistic framework just to speak about it.
Which completely explains why he struggled for years to articulate this event to people.
Absolutely. But, an experience like this is a flash of lightning.
It doesn't last?
No, it only lasts for a few moments.
Yeah.
It's not a permanent static state. Eventually, the neurobiology stabilizes.
So Joe comes back down. He returns to the mundane reality of April 15th.
He does. The world returned. Memory returned. Language returned. The familiar psychological construct of being Joe returned.
But they return differently, right?
Yes. The text notes that the foundational assumptions of reality were permanently cracked.
Something had been seen that couldn't be unseen.
Exactly. And suddenly, the dense mysticism he'd been studying intellectually for decades was no longer theoretical.
He started reading the historical mystics with an entirely new lens.
Yes, understanding them directly rather than conceptually.
So when the Buddha spoke of the end of suffering, it wasn't about avoiding physical pain.
Right, it was about the end of the friction caused by the ego demanding reality be different than it is.
Wow. And when the ancient Indian Upanishads declared Tattvam Asi, which translates to thou art that, or when Jesus said, I and the Father are one.
Or when the Sufis spoke of annihilation in the beloved. Or Lao Tzu in the Tao.
Yes. Joe realized they weren't just speaking in poetic metaphors to inspire people.
Not at all. They were providing literal, clinical descriptions of the exact same phenomenon.
Different cultures, different eras, different linguistic tools, but all pointing to the exact same hidden possibility in human consciousness.
They were basically field notes from the same unmapped territory.
And Joe is now reading them as practical manuals rather than religious allegories.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, yeah.
As profound as this historical connection is, The text makes a crucial, very grounding clarification.
Which is so important.
Joe did not become a saint.
No, he didn't.
He didn't unlock superhuman abilities. He still misplaced his keys.
He still forgot his passwords.
Right. He still felt perfectly ordinary human frustration when stuck in traffic. The narrative thoroughly demystifies this whole pop culture concept of enlightenment.
Because the personality, the specific quirks, the memory lapses, the emotional fluctuations, all of that remained intact.
His biological form and his social obligations remained.
Yeah. What fundamentally shifted was his relationship to those phenomena.
So the self didn't vanish forever into the ether.
It returned, but it was profoundly demoted in its level of authority.
It went from being his ultimate absolute identity to merely a useful, practical tool.
Exactly. The personality became something that awareness observed, rather than something that was fundamentally solidly real.
It's like realizing you're playing a highly immersive video game.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You still have to move the character around the map. You still get frustrated when your character loses a level or runs out of resources.
Yeah.
But you never forget that you are the player holding the controller. You are not the pixels on the screen.
The avatar is essential for navigating the mechanics of the game world, but it is not your fundamental nature.
So true.
And Joe, having a deeply analytical mind trained in the hard sciences, didn't take this shattered paradigm as an excuse to abandon logic.
He didn't throw away his science books and retreat to an ashram.
No, it drove him straight back to rigorous inquiry, but with entirely new, urgent questions.
The inquiry intensified. He started asking, can modern neuroscience explain what just happened in his brain?
Can clinical psychology map this collapse of the ego?
Right. Can physics shed light on this collapse of the observer and the observed?
Or is this experience pointing toward dimensions of reality that our current scientific paradigms simply haven't developed the tools to measure yet?
Which is such a massive question, and he finds a powerful bridge between these two seemingly opposed worlds.
He really does.
Because genuine science and genuine spirituality actually share the exact same starting line.
They both begin with wonder.
They begin with unbiased observation. And most importantly, they both begin with the crucial, humbling admission, we do not yet know.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the awakening experience didn't hand Joe a tidy packaged list of absolute answers about the mechanics of the universe.
Boy, it wasn't a shortcut to omniscience.
What it did was destroy his false certainty. It acted as a bulldozer, clearing away the rigid assumptions so that true, unclouded investigation could begin.
Which becomes the foundational premise for the rest of his book.
Exactly. Not as a religious doctrine that a reader must take on blind faith, but as a literal fact of subjective experience that demands objective investigation.
And this directly foreshadows the incredible scientific journey he goes on next, exploring cosmology, quantum theory, and the incredibly strange nature of matter.
Oh, the physics stuff is fascinating. He heavily explores the physicist David Bohm's concept of the implicate order.
Remind me, what is that again?
So this is the idea that beneath the surface appearance of separation, beneath the idea that everything is made of isolated, discrete parts, everything in the universe is actually unbroken and undivided.
Okay, right.
The best way to visualize Bowman concept is to think of a whirlpool in a river.
Whirlpool.
Yeah. If you look at a whirlpool, it appears to be a separate standalone object. You can point to it, you can name it, you can measure its speed.
But it's not a separate object at all.
Exactly. It's just a temporary expression of the unbroken flowing water.
The boundary of the whirlpool is an illusion created by the movement of the whole.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
And this perfectly mirrors Joe's experience of the collapse of the separate self.
So Joe is just a whirlpool in the flow of unified awareness.
Yes.
The realization of this unity naturally draws profound parallels to the massive transition in physics from classical mechanics to quantum mechanics.
That's the exact same shift.
Right, because classical physics, Isaac Newton, cause and effect, solid objects interacting predictably works perfectly fine for our everyday lives.
It works for engineering a car or building a suspension bridge.
Or, again, finding those misplaced keys. It is the physics of the macro level.
Yeah.
But when you zoom all the way in, when you get down to the absolute fundamental building blocks of reality at the quantum level, the rules of classical physics completely break down.
The paradigm shifts entirely.
Totally.
In classical physics, things are fixed and defined. But in quantum mechanics, we encounter concepts like superposition,
where a particle doesn't exist in one solid defined state.
Right. It exists as a field of multiple possibilities simultaneously until it's observed or measured.
And the ordinary human ego, the separate self, operates exactly like classical physics.
It really does. It's a highly practical, functional system for navigating the macro world.
It helps you pay your taxes, fulfill social contracts, and avoid physical danger.
But when consciousness is subjected to an intense, direct, fundamental level of awareness, the ego breaks down.
The classical rules of psychological separation dissolve, revealing a unified quantum layer beneath it all.
Yes. The ego acts as the observer that forces the infinite field of awareness to collapse into a rigid, defined self.
So when the ego is offline, the wave function, the pure potential of awareness, remains unbroken.
Exactly. We've traveled from a guy snoring in his bed to the total psychological collapse of the self through the ancient mystical traditions and straight to the edge of quantum mechanics.
It's quite a trip, and Joe's realization brings this vast conceptual journey directly back to the immediate present.
It does.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate mystery of the universe isn't actually out there.
No, it's not hidden in the distant stars or in the cosmic microwave background or deep inside the singularity of a black hole.
The greatest mystery is the awareness that is taking in these words right now.
The awareness belonging to you, the person listening to this deep dive.
Yeah.
It is the invisible presence that's been there throughout your entire life, standing quietly behind every thought, every emotion, and every shifting identity you have ever claimed.
The awareness that, for Joe, stepped out from behind the curtain for one unforgettable moment on April 15th.
So what does this all mean?
Well, it brings us to a rather provocative question to consider.
Let's hear it.
If the separate self is merely a practical tool, a functional illusion, what would human progress look like if our default operating system wasn't rooted in this classical physics ego?
Oh, wow.
Just imagine a society where the baseline consciousness operated from this unified quantum awareness. How would our systems of conflict, our economic structures, or simply our daily interactions change if the visceral need to defend a fictional boundary was completely removed?
It really challenges us to look at the very foundation of how we build our world.
It does. Next time you feel a surge of anxiety or fear about your life, your career, or your future, pause for just 1 second.
Just 1 second.
And ask yourself, who exactly is the I that is feeling threatened right now? If you try to locate that self in your mind, you might just find that there's nothing there to defend.
A society operating without the heavy backpack. Love that.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
It really is. Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.
It was a pleasure.
Keep questioning, keep observing, and we will catch you on the next one.